You're listening to the Holistic Spaces podcast brought to you by Mindful Design Feng Shui School, episode 348 Feng Shui for Supporting Your Children. Welcome to episode 348 of the Holistic Spaces podcast, where we hope to inspire, educate, and empower you to create your own holistic spaces that nurture and resonate with you. Angie Cho and Laura Morris are the founders of the Mindful Design Feng Shui School and authors of Mindful Living, a guide to the everyday magic of Feng Shui. We teach Feng Shui online at mindfuldesignschool.com. Sign up for our newsletter for special free content, workshops, and events available only to our newsletter subscribers. You can visit mindfuldesignschool.com/join.
So we have a couple of housekeeping items to let you guys know of. First of all, if you haven't heard, our certification, 6-month certification program to train to become a feng shui consultant is open for enrollment, and that cohort begins February of 2026. And I believe there is right now a early bird pricing up. We also have an advanced training stream for those of you that have already maybe done a program, are certified, and want to do an advanced training with us. Angie and Catherine Metz teach that. It's called Pure Professor. That is also open, and that begins in October of this year, in October 2025. Okay, so we are today talking about how to use feng shui to support children, to help your kids. And this subject is actually quite popular. Parents, people with kids, I am one of them. I am an empty nester, though, at this point. You know, when I was first studying feng shui, it was when my son was very, very young. And, when I first started doing the program with Angie that we met at that point, my son was very, very young. And I was always really interested in looking at the feng shui that I could do to support him and to help us out as a family, but also him. And, because we all want to create a feng shui family friendly home. Like, we may not know it, but the thought of being able to create a peaceful, supportive, harmonious home is really appealing. And with feng shui and kids, there's a few things that you want to take into account. Feng shui is feng shui, right? It's obviously going to be applicable for everyone, but each person's different. Individuals are different. Children are more dynamic. They have different energy than adults. So, you have to look at the space a little bit differently. So we have put together a few really simple ways that you can use feng shui to support your children. We're going to go through them here. And again, like everything, if you have something maybe a little bit more involved or you want a little bit more support, go to our website and check out our grads and work with one of those consultants because they will really help you. Yeah.
One of our first recommendations for creating a supportive home using feng shui for your children is to create a supportive bedroom for your children and for yourself. But just like adults, it's important for kids to have a comfortable space to retreat to when they need a recharge. And in many cases, this will be their bedroom. We can all think about where we went when we were young, right? So we would want to maybe spend extra time in our bedrooms to get that alone time or that self care time. So, one thing to look out for the bedroom for all the people in the home, but including your children, you want to make sure that your children or your child's bed is in the commanding position, which means that when they are lying in bed, they can see the door to their bedroom without being directly in line with the door. Usually that means diagonal. So when you're laying in bed, like say you're sitting up, leaning against the headboard, that you should be able to see the door without directly being in line with the door. You don't have to turn your head to see the door. And this creates a feeling of ease. It gives you control of your environment, and it gives them control of their own private bedroom, which is their space. And it gives them awareness of anyone who might be coming in through the door. And if the bed is not in command, then the best solution is to move it. If you have a unique situation, which there's always someone that 1 out of 10 people has a unique situation, that's when you would call in a professional because everyone has a unique situation on something. So you want to get it fine tuned. But in general, you want to make sure that your bed is in command. And that's the way that we would explain it without knowing your specific home. Again, the best option is to move it. But if that's not possible, and there's a difference between not wanting to or not being able to, and it also depends on the age of your children too. So
Mhm.
this if they're over 8, this would be a decision they make. So if they don't wanna be in command, that's okay. If they're 8 or over, let them make that decision. You can tell them why it's important to you, but that's their decision to make. If they're younger than 8 and you're the parent or the caretaker, then you can rearrange their bedroom and you can rearrange their bed, or if you can't, you can add a mirror so that they can see the reflection of the door in the mirror so that your child can see the door while they're lying in bed. And you explain to them why you put that there. And of course, again, it's really important no matter what age to make sure that the child is completely on board with you changing their room.
Yeah, and another question we sometimes get is whether or not the bed can be pushed up against the wall for a child. Again, if the child is young, preteen, it's absolutely supportive, and they often feel that it's to have that against a wall is much more supportive for them. And obviously, when they're younger, there's logistic reasons why, when they're really little. So it's easier just to have it pushed against a wall. So there's nothing wrong with having the bed pushed against the wall, especially for a child that is, preteen, for them to feel more secure. And then you can still do that and have them in command, though, FYI. So let's talk a little bit about colors or elements that you can bring into a child's space or even into your home overall. It doesn't just have to be in the child's bedroom, although it can be. You can bring in specific elements using the 5 element principles. You can bring in specific things with intention. So you could ask yourself or your child, and this is where it's important because you're talking about someone else's chi. When you're deciding your own home, you can make these, for common areas, you can make the decisions. But when we're really when you're sitting there focused on how you can support your child, you want them to have some autonomy, you want them to have some decision in this and be a part of it. So you could explore with your child what they feel that they might need more of in their life. And some examples that we're going to kind of put in little categories. We're going to go through 5 different maybe senses or things or feelings that they may gravitate to or may feel that they need more of. So I'll start with the first one, and these aren't in any specific order. So the first one is grounding energy for stability. So if you feel that your child needs more grounding energy, they maybe need to just take a beat, settle, feel more settled, or maybe it's even something as simple as they really love to read. They want to create a space where they feel quiet and settled. You can bring in earth chi or the earth element. And some very simple ways to bring this in is to use a square table, the color yellow, a brown rug, earth tones. And again, you're doing this with intention. So you're saying, "Oh, that resonates with me and my child, and I feel that they do need more grounding energy, and so we're going to mindfully bring in some yellow." And it could even be a bouquet of yellow flowers or a plant in a yellow pot, right? It can be really simple.
The next is flexibility and kindness. So, if you'd like to have your child and your family feel more flexible, have more kindness, cultivate more kindness in your relationships with each other, you can bring in wood element. Wood element is brought into your home using elements like living green plants, house plants, healthy ones. Or you can also bring in blue or green paint or blue, green, teal home decor items.
If you would like to, or your child would like to cultivate a little bit more joy or maybe this is a tough one for a kid to think about, but, the idea of just being able to sit and think on things. So reflection, the idea of reflecting on things. I know kids don't think about these things, obviously, but, if they want to maybe take some time to, I don't want to say complete, because one thing, uh, just sort of go off script here. When I work with clients, and I've worked with a lot of clients, I find that sometimes they're like, my number one priority is my kids. And it's like, okay, I want my kid to do better in school. And so they're not trying hard enough. They're not studying hard enough. They're not doing this, not doing that. And so, that's, of course, as a feng shui practitioner, you want to be really mindful about the parents' wishes, and just really wanting to serve the child. So serve the family as a whole, which is why we're, looking at this sort of as a family as well as not just the child. So metal is actually associated with completion, with productivity. So, it would be an element and to bring in if you wanted to perhaps bring in more focus. But I like to look at it as more joy and more reflection. So taking it from a little bit of a softer approach. And the metal element can be brought in with the color white, with anything that's metal, with ringing a bell, adding in bells or ringing in bells or singing bowls and things like that. And those are all ways to bring in that vibration of metal chi.
If you'd like your child or your family to feel more creativity and exploration and more flow, you can explore the water element. So, ways to bring in water element into your home from a feng shui perspective. For instance, mirrors can bring in water element. The color of water element is black or dark navy, so flowy things like textiles, black or dark navy textiles like drapes and things like that can invite in more creativity and exploration and wisdom for you and your family.
And then the last theme or, energy or chi that your child may have need of is inspiration and warmth. And this is the fire element. So it's associated with many things. Overall, it's the idea of being able to bring things to light, being able to shine light on things, being able to make things, more inspirational, but more generous and warm and all these lovely attributes. But the reason it's sort of out of order, quote, out of order in its last fire is because children often don't need a lot of fire chi. So you just want to use this one lightly. Children are generally, they have a lot of energy. They have a lot of already have that kind of built in, and it can be a bit much for them. But again, you want to ask the child. A lot of times, kids are drawn to certain colors, but there's really clever ways you can bring it in. So you don't have to just obviously paint a wall red. Red is the color of fire of this element. Instead, you could bring it in small ways. You could bring it in with lighting. So you could add in fairy lights or string lights. You could add in more orangey, colors as opposed to a really fiery red. You could bring in also the shape. The shape you could bring in, which is really simple, is a triangular shape. So there's ways to bring in the elements in a subtle level as opposed to being really bold with it. Again, for the fire element or for this, this theme, I would say, use the color very lightly or use the element very lightly.
So, when looking at feng shui to support your children, to support your family, you might want to look at more growth, more support, more harmony for your family. There's actually an area of the feng shui Bagua mandala that is related to family. It's often called family, sometimes it's called new beginnings. And if you look at a feng shui Bagua mandala, it's typically green. And the colors associated with it are green, blue, and teal. And this is a great area to activate, to work with, to explore, to notice, to figure out where it is in your home if you want to create more harmony and support for your family, including your children. So, to find this family area, to find this position, you can stand in your home's formal front door looking in and imagine a 3 by 3 grid, like a tic tac toe, overlaid on the entire space. No, this is a little bit hard to explain, but this is where a feng shui professional can help you, or you can look at our book. We teach people how to lay the bagua in their home in our book. But if you find this area, it's the center left section of this 3 by 3 grid. And this area is called family. It's called new beginnings. And it can be an area that you can locate in your home.
And then once you've figured out where that area is, you could choose to activate it. So in feng shui, we often talk about activating or enhancing a particular gua, a particular area. And in this case, we're talking about the family gua or the family area. And you could bring in the element that is associated with that area. And a very simple way to do this is to place a living green houseplant in this area. And it can be any plant you choose, but it should be a new plant. So often we get people saying, "Oh, can I just take a plant from here and put it there?" I think if you are really interested in what we've had to say in this particular podcast and you want to activate this area, I would make a special trip and I would get a plant. And I would even include your children in the process of choosing it, caring for the plant. I think the entire family can be involved in it. It could be really fun. And it would be such a lovely way to activate the family area of the bagua of your home. So, last but not least, Angie, do you want to talk a little bit about mindfulness in the home and setting examples?
Sure. So we often describe feng shui, we often define feng shui as a mindfulness practice. It's about noticing the details of your home, setting that intention to pay attention to the details and to explore your home, your environment with care and noticing that connection with your inner environment and your outer environment. So if you want to look at how to create more support for your home and for your children and create more harmony, you can also encourage your children to be more mindful by setting an example. So instead of telling them, like we do this with our students, instead of telling them how to do things, we try to set an example, to model, to show, to have them find that own wisdom within them. So this might mean prioritizing your morning meditation or yoga practice, modeling that for them and inviting them to join you for a few minutes. Or another great way is to encourage mindfulness in the home by setting aside a quiet time throughout the day. And it could be a mindful minute with you and your family. This could be first thing in the morning or right before your kids go to bed. And this can help set a tone of stillness and presence. Is this something you did with your son, Laura?
Yeah, well, because at the time I've been studying feng shui for so long that when he was 3 and 4 years old, I was doing the program that we did together in New York, and so I would go, and we were learning so many interesting meditations and blessings and stuff, and so I would practice them, and he was so always super, super interested in it. So, for me, it was just he was at an age it was such a great age for us to both be learning the practice a little bit more deeply, and we had a lot of fun with it. So, yeah, I think if you ask him now, he's got and well, if you met him now, I mean, he's, in university now, he reads tarot cards and he puts his bed into command every time he moves a place. So, he's he's locked in, as he would say. Yeah. So I definitely think your children are like little sponges. So they'll definitely learn what's around you.
Yeah, so this is a great time to look at how to create feng shui to support your children, especially as we're into back to school and everything. I mean, everyone's back to school now, but it's something that's top of mind for parents. So, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Holistic Spaces podcast. You can tune in every Monday for a new episode. If you like our podcast, please share it with others. You can leave a review. You can always support us by joining our mailing list, mindfuldesignschool.com/join. You can opt in there. We have links to any special classes we're teaching. You can check out our mini courses and certification if you visit mindfuldesignschool.com, and the top right corner says student login, and that leads you to our Mindful Design School courses. And if you'd like to explore the world of holistic spaces and feng shui on an even deeper level, check out all the offerings we have on our website, mindfuldesignschool.com. We have a blog, we have all the podcast episodes. So thank you so much, and we will see you next week.